Happy Mushoku Sundays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation anime series, Season 2, Episode 16, and what a doozy of an episode it was. So much emotion. We get the sisters back. There's a lot of build-up of things happening. Rudeus is learning about how to deal with young girls because they're kind of difficult to deal with all their emotions and everything. And yes, brief moment with Ruijerd. Very brief, but we had a moment with Ruijerd. Best boy Ruijerd, unfortunately, parting ways once again. But yes, for those who don't know, this is my impressions / skip content videos. I'll go through the episode itself, give my thoughts on the episode, as well as give you any skip content, which unfortunately for this episode is quite a bit. We skipped 3 total chapters. One of them makes sense because there's a lot of speculation that one chapter, which is a part of some other chapters, may be covered at another time in another episode. But the other 2, I'll probably do separate videos for them on Sunday morning or something like that, so keep an eye out for those. But yeah, if you want skip content, this is the place to be. I like to dive through this series and give like a full context to it. But let's jump into this episode. Let's focus on this one. Jumping right into the episode, I have to cover that technically they did skip Norn making a comment about Rudeus smelling like alcohol when they came back from the party. So that is technically important. But yes, we get the little brief conversation between Ruijerd and Rudeus, which is honestly full of emotion. Obviously, last time we had them together was way back in volume 6, which was like way in like the end of season 1. That parting itself was just very emotional, and now they're finally together. I do like the fact that during this entire segment, there is a little bit of emphasis. They give it in the anime as well, but Rudeus doesn't really know what to talk about with Ruijerd. Like, he's finally in front of me. What do I talk about? What did we used to talk about? In his mind, he does technically, yes, recall that Ruijerd wasn't much of a person of words back in the day. Like, when they were traveling together, Ruijerd was a man of few words. And yeah, it's technically the case it is now. It does give a sense that, yeah, Rudeus himself has sort of changed. He wasn't so communicative back then, just like Ruijerd was, but now things have kind of changed. But yes, when he asks Ruijerd what he's been doing, Ruijerd does mention in the anime that he has been searching a forest in the southern region for about 2 years. In the novel series, it gets into more detail in the idea that, yes, he was looking for a Superb tribe, which that was what he parted ways with Rudeus for, was to continue to search for the Superb tribes. He assumes that after everything that happened with the war, that yes, they probably scattered. If any that still remain, they're probably scattered. But yes, he headed to a dense forest to the south of the King Dragon Mountains and searched it for 2 years. But last he found nothing. He did find some belongings to people that he believed died from the displacement incident and returned them to a nearby town. Now it is important to note here that the novel series has described the displacement incident that it transported people. And anything not touching the people, like their clothes or if they had something in their pocket or whatever, those things evaporated. So the assumption here is that if he found belongings to people, it was probably people that were transported to the forest, maybe fell or died there from the monsters, and he probably found their belongings and then took them to the nearby town. He then headed south along the coast and arrived at Eastport. He was planning to gather info about Millis and then head to search the conflict zone, which conflict zone's like just east of that valley where the Fatoa region was, north of Sharon. For those who don't remember, that was where Ghislaine was actually transported to with the displacement incident. She actually went through there and found Philip and Hilda before she got back to the refugee camp. But then he ran into Paul. At that time, Paul was hesitating whether or not to send his daughters up to north, but Ruijerd volunteered. Which that, again, is in its own chapter, and I'm assuming at this point they're not going to cover it, so that's probably the first one that I'll do a full video on to show how Ruijerd met them. And yes, it's technically important to see why Norn was so attached to Ruijerd. Which, yes, without context makes sense because Ruijerd's such a great guy. But yeah, he knows that Ginger came with them, and Ginger immediately went to the prince, which is obviously Zenoba. He knows that, yes, he met Roxy, and she was not like what he described her as. She immediately was scared to death the moment that she's seen the gem on his forehead. Which, yes, Rudeus in his own mind was hoping that he could have seen that face. But yes, I do like the fact that there's a lot of emphasis here that Aisha herself is the reason why they made it up there so fast. Yes, of everybody there in that group, she was the one that so badly wanted to go see Rudeus. She wants, again, to serve him. Apparently, they made it here a couple months early due to Aisha's eagerness. Aisha had proposed that they accompany a merchant caravan so they could travel at night. She suggested offering Ruijerd and Ginger's services as guards. She even figured out quicker routes, by retracing their steps to previous towns to find more suitable caravans. While Rudeus assumed that she was just sleeping like a log while they worked non-stop, Ruijerd said that no, she wasn't sleeping. She was constantly calculating our route, planning for us to travel in the most efficient way possible. Apparently their fast travel wasn't without a hitch though. Both Aisha and Norn had collapsed from exhaustion part way. It seemed that it was part of Aisha's plan to make it there before winter made the travel rough. That's a really important thing there as well, because they kind of noted once winter hits up the north, it's really tough to travel through all that snow and the blizzards and everything. Ginger didn't seem to mind the fast pace. She was eager to see Zenoba. It seemed that she planned to resume serving the prince. But yes, that's when the conversation goes to Eris. Ruijerd's like, wait, so what happened with Eris? Where's Eris at? In the anime, Rudeus just quickly says, yeah, we separated. She said that we weren't suited for each other, blah, 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 and kind of just skips forward. But yeah, there's a lot in his head in this regard, and it is kind of a sad, tragic thing that Rudeus kind of reads something in Ruijerd that Ruijerd himself isn't saying. Rudeus didn't want to talk about Eris, but he figured that Ruijerd deserved to know. Rudeus told him everything after they parted ways. That they slept together, her disappearing, his despair, searching for his mother, meeting Elise, following the man god's recommendation, which is important, yes, because Rudeus has already told Ruijerd about the man god, reuniting with Sylphie, and their wedding. And yes, Ruijerd is kind of seeing this as, no, I think, yes, that might be what she's saying, that she might have wanted to part ways and that you weren't balanced or whatever. But he also believes that Rudeus might be misunderstanding what Eris was saying there. Ruijerd said, I see, that happens often. When Rudeus asked what he meant, he said it's an outlook warriors often get bogged down by. I'm sure Eris doesn't hate you. When Rudeus pointed out that she said the two weren't well balanced, Ruijerd said I have no idea what she meant by those words literally, or if you just misunderstood her meaning. Misunderstood? Yes, Eris was never very good with words. And that's an important thing to note. She is very sucky with words. As we all know by the letter that she wrote, we are unbalanced, which was literally her saying that I am weak and I'm nothing compared to you. She wanted to get stronger for Rudeus because she felt like she was holding him back. Rudeus thought that Ruijerd would know. He wasn't good with words either. Ruijerd said, at the very least, she liked you when you were traveling together. If you have the opportunity to meet again, keep a cool head and talk to her about it. Rudeus wondered at that point if he got it all wrong. Maybe by well balance, she meant that she wasn't at his level. Had she left to get stronger and then return? If that was the case, maybe she meant for him to wait for her. It was too late to be told that now, though. No matter what she meant, he had spent 3 years suffering. 3 years with no peep from her. The person who finally saved him was Sylphie, not Eris. What was he supposed to do now? Toss Sylphie to the side and make up with Eris? There was no way. Plus, he was a little terrified by the thought of meeting Eris again. It wasn't that he didn't trust what Ruijerd was saying, but there was a chance that she had gotten fed up with him. It would be a blow to his feelings if he approached her with the intent of reconciling, only for her to punch him and refuse to look him in the eyes. He decided to stop thinking about it. Whatever the truth, there was no change in the past. Dwelling on it wouldn't help. Again, this is like that sad reality right here where Rudeus is finally realizing, just having Ruijerd say, yeah, I think you got that wrong. Again, he spent those 3 years suffering. He thought that she abandoned him. He read her note wrong, and in return, she was terrible at communicating that to him. She didn't want to write this big long letter saying everything that she was going to do, that she was going to go get strong and everything, because she was afraid that he'd follow her. He wanted her to stay behind because she was holding him back. And Rudeus read that wrong. So this is kind of one of those situations where I made a whole video on this, by the way, which is all the skipped content from Volume 6 that they unfortunately skipped because it gives Eris's full perspective. The problem that we're having here is that she failed to communicate it, but additionally on his side, he drew his own conclusions, and that's what led to him being in that depressed state. It's a two-factor here. They both did wrong here. And right here he's realizing, so maybe I was the only one wrong, but it doesn't change anything because she's never said anything and I was suffering. Like, it's almost like he can't accept it. And even if he does accept it, he's afraid of accepting it and then realizing that that's wrong as well. And then that he goes, okay, I can fix this, and goes to her, and then she punches him, and his trust in that would be completely ruined. It's a really sad state for the two of them. So this was like a massive changing point for me when I read this whole part, was that Ruijerd's finally the first person to say, I think you might have gotten it wrong. Ruijerd, of all people, who's a warrior, and is pretty much equal to Eris. They're both few words, and they're both warriors. And so Ruijerd, if anybody, would understand what Eris thinks here. And Ruijerd would see that well-balanced and go, oh, I think I know what she's talking about. I think you got that wrong. So it's a really interesting little segment. But yeah, at this point in Rudeus' mind, he's just thinking about, man, I'm going to introduce him to Zenoba, Cliff. Oh man, it would be great to, he probably knows Badigadi already, so probably introduce him to Badigadi. But unfortunately, Ruijerd is already planning on leaving the next day. So all those plans get ruined. In the novel series, Ruijerd said specifically that he had heard that there was a devil deep in the forest to the east. So That's what he actually wanted to go check out. That's why he really wants to leave like right now. Again, he's looking for his people. He's looking for the Spurts. So, yes, everybody's seen him as a devil with his green hair and everything like that, which is technically going away because he's shaved it down. People are trusting him more. He's away from the demon continent, the Mills continent. People accept him more here. But yes, he would know of anybody if somebody with green hair was spotted out there. People would fear him and basically call him a devil. So he's assuming that it might be a Superb. Now here's where things get really interesting in the novel series, and it's vague. It doesn't really clarify exactly what's going on here, but there is a sense in the novel series right here of Rudeus seeing some sort of hesitancy in Ruijerd wanting to be there. He feels like Ruijerd is uncomfortable being in his house. Ruijerd says, besides, I have no intentions of getting in your way. Basically being a nuisance. Rudeus said, of course not. You'll never be in my way. That's when Ruijerd says, it is also a bit difficult to be here. Rudeus assumed that it was because he and Eris weren't together. Perhaps in Ruijerd's position, he'd be uncomfortable seeing him cozying up to Sylphie. Rudeus felt like there was a rift forming in their friendship. Maybe Eris was a foundation that kept them together. This is Rudeus, I think, reading way too much into it, but that's what Rudeus does. Ruijerd then spoke up. Rudeus, don't make that face. I'll come back again. Rudeus forced his smile. He didn't regret marrying Sylphie. However, he did feel that he had made some sort of mistake. And at that point, Ruijerd pretty much says, if I run into Eris, I'll see what she has to say. I'll hear her side of the story, which he says, please do so. Now, again, this continues. Right after this, Sylphie comes back in. They introduce each other. They awkwardly shake hands. Rudeus notes that both of them had suffered from green hair, but both discarded it, which is technically makes sense. Again, Ruijerd himself, he shaved his head, whereas Sylphie, she lost her green hair when she was transported. After they offered him a room, obviously Ruijerd declined it. Rudeus knew that that was how Ruijerd was. He'll just find a corner and just sleep in a corner somewhere, which, yes, he ends up sleeping in the same room that Aisha and Norn take, which, yes, Rudeus has made a joke about the fact that he's a lolicon, but no, he knew Ruijerd. That was what he was like. Never keep an eye off them during their travels. It's like even now, until Ruijerd leaves, his job is to guard those two children. That night, Sylphie was concerned that she offended Ruijerd. Rudeus mentioned that he was slow to warm up to people. Though inside, Rudeus felt he had conflicting thoughts about his marriage to Sylphie. Again, he still thinks that Ruijerd is upset that he went with Sylphie and not was with Eris. The next morning, yes, we get the scene with Badigadi and Ruijerd. Rudeus walking out there to do his trading, and boom. I think they nailed this scene pretty well. I was actually expecting it to be a lot more of like a very low perspective shot to show like that scale. It's basically like a 3-tier scale. Badigadi way up here, Ruijerd right here, and then Rudeus down here. They kind of had a few points in this episode where it's like, I think the Ruijerd is too small right here or too big right here. Rudeus thought one was a captain of Laplace's Imperial Guard. The other was a moderate faction on the opposing side. While Ruijerd currently despised Laplace, their circumstances were different back then. So he's noting that, yes, back in the day, they probably fought each other. With the stories of the Superb tribe's madness, Rudeus assumed that some in their path were Badigadi's people. While Badigadi wasn't committed to ruling, he would probably seek revenge for his citizens. And sadly, he possibly did not know what Laplace did to the Superb tribe. Rudeus figured that he'd talk to Badigadi about it the next time they met. He also wondered how he would react to his plans to mass-produce Ruijerd figurines. But yes, thankfully, nothing happens. Badigadi notices Rudeus, says, oh, that's what's going on here, and goes to leave. And then, yes, Ruijerd says, dude, I'm not going to fight him. Don't worry about that. But yes, this whole scene kind of implies that idea that Badigadi isn't too happy seeing a Superb here. But at least he acknowledges at the moment that he sees Rudeus, he's like, okay, so there's got to be something going on here. And he kind of trusts the whole situation. But yes, they have a meal, and then, unfortunately, Ruijerd goes to leave. And in the novel series, they go to the city exit. Norn immediately grabbed Ruijerd's shirt. While it would be subtle enough not to notice, Ruijerd slowed his pace. She didn't seem to want to part ways with Ruijerd, and Rudeus understood that feeling. Right here, Rudeus is immediately acknowledging, Norn, I was in the same position. Again, way back there in season 1, that moment that Ruijerd goes to leave, Rudeus was broke. This whole scene right here just completely echoes the scene of him parting ways with Eris and Rudeus. Rudeus honestly thought of asking him to stay longer. Then he'd get to introduce him to his friends, but the thought of Eris held him back. As expected. He didn't want to cause Ruijerd discomfort. It wasn't Sylphie's fault, of course, but Rudeus didn't really feel like he could really talk to Ruijerd until he cleared the air with Eris. Again, right here, he thinks the whole reason that Ruijerd is uncomfortable is because Eris is not there. There's this other girl that's there. But Rudeus didn't even know what Eris was. Their goodbyes were short, but Rudeus figured they could talk again once things calmed down. Just keep kicking the can down the road. Eventually, me and Ruijerd will be able to sit down and enjoy a casual conversation. Ruijerd gives his goodbye to Aisha. Says don't be too demanding of Rudeus. But then yes, Norn says that she wants to go with Ruijerd. which it hurts. The head pat and her crying, I want to go with you. But yes, obviously, the reason that Norn wants to go with him is because it's Ruijerd, obviously. But additionally, she's noting that she doesn't want to be here with Rudeus. She would rather be with Ruijerd. Her reasoning is because, yes, way back there, she witnessed Rudeus punching her father. Her father, who is literally her pillar. Like, the only thing that's in her mind right now, all the way up until this point, it was her father. And then once Ruijerd started taking care of them, Ruijerd became another one that she could actually rely on. She does not like Rudeus. And yes, that was all stemming back from one of her youngest memories of Rudeus punching the crap out of the only person that mattered to her. Additionally, yes, she smelled like alcohol. And she thinks that he's unfaithful. When she brought up him punching her father, Ruijerd said that's in the past. He's already reflected on his actions. Your father did as well. I told you about the hardship he'd been through as we traveled. Even you accepted that. And then, yes, she brings up the fact that he was drunk and with some other girl this time. I can't trust him. Which, yes, he points out that, that's just how things happen between people. And this is the result of it. But yes, then that's when Ruijerd goes to part ways. Oof, it hurts. It hurts again. Like, I just hated this when I read it, and I hate it in the anime too. It's like I just want Ruijerd to just be there. Even at some point, or during this segment when Rudeus was talking to Ruijerd, he even mentioned the idea that, yeah, Ruijerd's like the perfect person to be protecting Norn and Aisha as they traveled up here. He's like the best dude. And yes, that was all from firsthand experience. He experienced that when he was very young, traveling the world with Ruijerd. He kept them safe. He deeply respects Ruijerd for that. And so, yes, he even makes up the joke of like, if I had the funding and everything, I would love to hire him as a bodyguard for life. Just protect my sisters for the rest of their lives. But yes, unfortunately, this is where we skipped. I'm not going to name the title of one of the chapters, but again, that is probably going to be something they'll cover at a later date. And yes, the whole chapter that shows when Ruijerd meets Norn, Aisha, and Paul, which again, I'll make a whole video on that. But yes, this is the point which we conclude Volume 10. Cutting scenes, we get the scene with Aisha and Norn talking about their futures, which, yes, immediately Aisha is just super happy about the idea of being the maid. It is funny because, like, in this earlier segment here in the novel series, there's so much emphasis on the idea that Aisha is speaking to Rudeus, like, overly formal. Like, she's being very formal with him. Because, again, she's been living with Lilia this whole time and preparing herself to serve Rudeus. And so she has a lot of knowledge about etiquette and mannerisms that she should be speaking to her master. Which, yes, makes Rudeus extremely uncomfortable having his little sister saying this stuff to him. But the interesting thing here is this is a reality check for Rudeus. Because, yes, he speaks formally to other people. And there's been several times throughout the series up until this point where Rudeus has people say, please stop talking to me like that. You're talking to me as if you're trying to keep me at a distance. Speaking formally with me, rather than casually and comfortably, makes me feel like you're trying to keep me at a distance. And this is something that he got really swept up in during his times adventuring in Volume 7, which would be the earlier segments of Season 2. Everybody, Soldat hated it. Sarah hated it. Everybody hates the way that he talks. And so he's getting a dose of his own doings here. He's like, literally, she's doing to him what he's been doing to everybody else. And he's realizing at this point, yeah, maybe I should probably stop doing that. Aisha brings up the fact that she's surprised that Rudeus has married Sylphie, which, yes, they kind of point out that Norn doesn't remember Sylphie. And that's partly probably why she's so uncomfortable right now coming to this house and seeing him with Sylphie rather than Eris. But that really is an aspect of Norn not ever remembering Sylphie. Because, yes, way back when they were in Buena Village, Sylphie came by on a regular basis to hang out with them. But the thing is that Norn was always kind of with Zenith and was very shy, whereas Aisha was always, just jumping out there to see Sylphie, because Sylphie was technically training a lot with Lilia. Lilia was teaching her how to cook and was teaching her etiquette. And so Aisha, grew on Sylphie quite a bit during that time. But they would both know who Eris is, because, yes, technically Norn, she had dinner with Eris when they were in Millis Continent. That's another skip content video. I made a whole video on that. And yes, Aisha obviously knew Eris from Sharon. He reluctantly filled him in the idea that, yes, they got to the Fatoa region, and that's when they parted ways. And then he filled him in on everything after that he became an adventurer, he contracted a disease. He says specifically, I just contracted a disease. I went to the university to cure it, and yes, I met Sylphie, and she managed to cure my illness. But he kept the whole thing about ED out of the picture and how it was cured. But yes, Aisha then goes and gets the box and brings it out, which at that point, it has 3 locks on it, and Rudeus quickly used his magic to pretty much snap all 3 of them, while Aisha is standing there with the 3 keys. It was filled with enough money to keep their family afloat for a decade or so. It also had 2 letters. And that's unfortunately for the anime onlys. There's a whole other letter in there. But yes, one of the letters is the one from Paul. That was the same letter that was sent to him before that he got a few days prior. The second letter, now that's the one that the anime doesn't mention, which is essentially a letter from Lilia noting Norn and Aisha's education. And yes, what she felt like was their flaws. When it came to her talking about Aisha, she said that she was talented and rarely failed at anything that she tried, mastering everything that Lilia taught her. She had a good grasp on reading, writing, math, history, and geography. She was skilled in cleaning, laundry, general housework, and cooking. She was also a beginner tier and water god style in all 6 basic elements of magic too. But Lilia notes that this left her with a swollen head. She advised Rudeus to be strict with her. Norn, on the other hand, she said that she was an ordinary girl, but constantly being compared to her sister at school, leaving her sullen and withdrawn, putting up a tough front for all to see. She advised Rudeus to treat her gently and with kindness. At this point, Rudeus felt that Lilia was being harsh on Aisha, figuring it may be due to the fact that she viewed herself as Paul's mistress or lover, rather than a second wife. Still, his gut instinct was to treat them equally. While Aisha was achieving a lot, Rudeus did realize that it would cause Norn to have an inferiority complex. Norn had no notable strengths or weaknesses academically, which put her ahead of someone like Eris. In most classes, she would be middle of the pack or just below, but her life was seriously disrupted by all the travel. Given the circumstances, she was doing pretty well. She hadn't given up on improving at least. Sadly, there weren't any other messages in the box. He was hoping that there would be a word from Roxy, but she probably refrained out of politeness as these were intimate family letters. He's like, I want a letter from Roxy. But no, I do like this whole segment because it is really kind of pushing on already that Norn has this inferiority complex. She's fine. She's a normal girl. And again, that's that difficulty even Paul was mentioning way back in the day. Paul kept mentioning the idea that there was a fear there that Norn was different. Like she was, like something happened. Like there was, it's one of those aspects you see Rudeus, who's doing incredible things. And we all know it's because of his previous life. He's doing incredible things. And then over here you have Aisha, and she's soaking up things so quickly. She's so smart. Even at a young age, she was already doing things. And then Norn, she's normal. And that made him fearful that something was wrong with her. And even here, it's something that keeps compounding. There's something wrong with her. It's really a sad thing. But yes, that's when Rudeus, knowing what Paul said, says, you guys are going to go to school. Well, yes, immediately, Aisha's like, hell no. Again, she was so excited that she finally gets to go to her brother. Again, the person that she was supposed to serve. And the moment that she gets there, he's like, okay, you're going to school. She's like, no, I want to be your maid. I want to be your maid. What the heck? She even kept the headband, taking that out. She was so cute with their hair down. It's so cute. Aisha with her hair down was so cute. Which, yes, he admitted in his head, he was so, like, happy to see that she kept that headband. He was fine with Aisha not attending. The desire to learn new things was more important than sitting in a classroom. If you lacked desire, it was a waste of time. He didn't get anything out of his time in junior high. But because Paul instructed him to have them attend, he decided to have them take the entrance exam. Aisha probably seemed confident that she'd ace it. Which, as they note later on, that he realized that she probably spent that entire week cramming for that test. She wanted to pass that test so bad. If she did pass it, he'd be fine with her not attending, and would have to explain it to father later. But yes, Norn, on the other hand, was not so confident that she was going to ace it, and she didn't want to do it. Which I like this because immediately he goes, don't worry about it. It's a kind of school that as long as you have money, you can attend. Which she immediately thinks that he's talking about paying them to get her in and everything like that, which is an insult. It's like, I don't want to be a part of a school like that. And yeah, Aisha was not too happy about her talking back to him. I hate the fact they cut this, but yes, right here, they start squabbling. They start arguing back and forth because Aisha doesn't like the way that Norn is talking to him. At the same time, Norn doesn't have anything to do with this whole situation. And so he says it turned to grabbing, hair pulling, scratching. He's like, it felt nice to actually see them fighting like normal kids rather than straddling the other and brutally pummeling them, which again is a reference to Eris as a child straddling him and just pummeling the hell out of him. But no, Rudeus stopped them with a tone that was a bit sharper than expected. They stopped. Norn looking to the ground, tears welling up. He clarified that the university allows students regardless of status, race, or talent. He even pointed out that Roxy attended it, so it was a good school. Again, he's kind of clarifying here that it's not so much that no matter how much you pay, you'll get in, you'll probably pass. It's more of an aspect that as long as you pay, they accept anybody, no matter what your talent is. Not that if you pay more or you bribe them, it's just that they accept everybody. They're a very open university. He figured that Norn could find something that she was interested in. After accepting to take the stupid exam, she stormed out, and Aisha immediately started insulting her, which he told her to stop. He said that he didn't want her to insult Norn, especially not her performances in school. Again, right here, based on what Lilia was saying and what he's seeing and experiencing right now, he's obviously seeing that she has inferiority complex. And having Aisha essentially keep jabbing at that weak point that she has, it's going to affect her. So he's telling her, don't do that anymore. Rudeus believed that Norn was doing her best in her own way. But yes, at this point, realizing that he hadn't the faintest clue on how to deal with 10-year-old girls, and it was going to be a bumpy road. But yeah, this is when we have a crap ton of skipped content, so let's sit back and enjoy. But yes, immediately from this point, Rudeus goes to the university, enrolls both his sisters to take the entrance exam. Jenius, the vice principal, was extremely excited to meet the two sisters because he assumed that they were going to be as skilled as Rudeus, which Rudeus clarifies, yeah, one of them's a genius, but the other one's a normal girl, which Jenius assumed that he was just being modest as always. Before leaving, Rudeus inquired if Badigadi was on the campus, but he was not. Rudeus really badly wanted to clear things up with him about Ruijerd as soon as he could. He then dropped by Nanahoshi's, who was nursing a hangover from the party. He quickly casted detoxification on her, and she thanked him. She stated that her reward for him helping her was not ready yet. After he informed her that his sisters were in the neighborhood, she asked if they were his sisters from the other world. She's like, wait, your sisters are here from the other world? He's like, no. They were born here and raised in this world. To which she assumed that the two of them were adorable because, yes, by this world's standards, she claimed that he was objectively handsome. He had to watch himself around Nanahoshi. In his previous life, he'd assumed that she had a thing for him. But he wasn't his old virgin self anymore. Not even single. He wasn't going to be messed with that easy. She began to talk about her brother from the other world. Once 10, probably older than her now. Assuming that time passes at the same rate back at home as here. Which, yes, that's a big question mark that I always had is if she ever does go back, is she gonna... She's obviously right now frozen, like her body is not aging. So the question is it because the old world time's not flowing over there and that's why she's keeping her same form? Or is that when she finally goes back, is she gonna be her current young self and everybody in the old world has all been aging? And this is a concern that she's kind of bringing up right now. Through what sounded like her being hit with nostalgia, she suddenly craved pudding. She remembered that her brother would steal her pudding from the fridge. Probably not the sweetest of memories, but it had her homesick. She looked up at the ceiling, probably holding back tears. He decided to take his leave to spare her the embarrassment. As he went to part ways, she apologized for all the trouble from before. Her opinion of him improved quite a bit. After making a dumb joke about her falling in love with him, they laughed together before he parted ways. Again, this is one of those sad realities points. It's like she's thinking about this bad memory. He used to always steal my pudding and I hated it. Her in the old world, she probably hated him for that. But now, because she's so homesick, just the thought of something that would anger her is now something that's filling her with nostalgia. I wish I can go back and he'd steal another pudding. If I could go back, he can steal that pudding again. I don't care. It is a sad reality. Yeah, we then cut over to the exam, which, yes... Aisha gets a perfect score, despite the fact that they assume there's a curriculum difference taught in Millis. Both Rudeus and Jenius were impressed. Having a 10-year-old perform that well, Jenius immediately offered to admit her as a special student. Yes, for those that don't remember, Rudeus right now is a special student. Anybody that's in that homeroom with like Cliff and Zenoba and all them, those are all special students. There are people that technically they don't even have to attend any classes. They just have to come to that homeroom every now and then. It's like an ultimate freedom position in this entire school. But yes, Rudeus had to hold his end of the bargain. She wanted to be his maid, not his family maid. And she specifically says that, no, I want to be your maid, Rudeus. Still, he wanted Aisha to keep an open mind to anything that she wanted to do. At which point, she mentioned that was something that she wanted to learn from him, asking him to teach her personally before fluttering her eyes and putting her finger to her lips. He chose to play dumb. There's something that you can teach me, brother. They cut all the naughty moments of Aisha in this episode. That's kind of the unfortunate thing. If she ever came out to ask him how to make babies, he'd have to lecture her. Hands off, of course. Yes, unfortunately, Norn had average scores, which they said isn't bad. She performed fine, except in comparison to Aisha, something he didn't need to read too much into. They would just have to help her improve bit by bit, even if she wouldn't be top of her class. As long as she learned the basic skills needed to function in society, that was all that mattered. He didn't feel that she needed to stand out from the crowd to live a happy, fulfilling life. And that's the important thing. It's obvious that she's comparing herself to geniuses, but it's like you don't need that necessarily. But it doesn't stop her from feeling that. University had a lot of interesting introductory classes, giving her options to see if there's something that she liked. She could even become a healer like her mother. But yes, that's when she decides that she wants to live in the dorm. Which Aisha's not too happy about the even idea of him allowing that. They're supposed to live in the house together. She was of course too young, but it wasn't like she was living out on her own. She'd have a roommate. It could lead to her finding friends. And the university was open to all ages. University was a safe environment, clear rules everyone had to follow. Personally, Rudeus wanted to get to know her by living with them, but forcing her to stick around may make her resent him more. He spent many years as a shut-in, refusing to engage with the world, locking himself up instead. For a while, his family tried many schemes to get through to him, tempting him with expensive gifts, foods, and talking about his future in bright tones. Every time, he'd withdraw further from them. He felt like they'd seen him as an animal in need of training rather than a human being. He didn't want Norn feeling like that, feeling trapped in there. He didn't want the both of them to feel on edge every day trying to read each other. It may be best to just keep an eye on her from a distance, maybe from a more comfortable place. They could see each other more clearly. Then there was Aisha, who tended to be more condescending to her. Despite warning her, she didn't seem aware half the time that she was doing it. Having them in the same home meant that Norn could be constantly exposed to that. Then there was the fact that Aisha and him was seen with unusual talents. It's tough to growing up, normal, in a household with exceptionals. Rudeus had gone through that before. Rather than her possibly running away and being harmed, the university was safer. Plus, Sylphie would be nearby, working with Ariel. Norn seemed to like her. Maybe they opened up to each other over a bath. Again, this is where Rudeus is realizing if I force Norn to stay here, and this is sadly something that he doesn't really communicate very well to Aisha. I can't force her to be here. Somebody did that to me before, and they tried to play into me, but I hated it. I kept pushing away. He's already tapping into, okay, I don't want her to become like me. I don't want her to be forced to be here and probably end up shut up in her room upstairs. I need to give her that distance, and hopefully things can clear up. Plus, again, he's noting that even without me in the picture, there's still Aisha. So he decided to allow it. Which, yes, immediately, Aisha's not happy about. It knows that, yes, Aisha at this point probably spent all week preparing for that test. And that was all to gain the approval of being the housemaid. But now Norn's asking for something, he immediately gives it to her. So she feels like he's playing favoritism. But she doesn't know in his head, he's trying to prevent her from shutting herself in. He's not giving her something, he's just allowing that to happen because she's already going to go to the school. Like, she failed the test, she's going to have to go to the school. But he's giving her something else. This is this and that is that. But yes, it brings up some wounds here because obviously Aisha believes that he's treating her that way just like everybody else did. Because you like her more. I'm just the half-sister. You like Norn more than me because she's your full sister. You see me as the mistress's daughter, just like everybody else did. Both Lilia and Norn's grandparents were saying the same exact thing. Which, yes, we knew this from before. This is what Lilia has always been doing. Lilia is constantly viewing them as different. Again, raising Aisha from birth to serve Rudeus. She never seen them as equals. It was one thing for Lilia to put herself down. He knew that she felt guilty about everything. That's why she continued to be the maid rather than acting like an equal to Zenith. So it was natural for her to have Aisha behave in similar fashion to Norn. But Rudeus figured Paul would have treated them equal. As for the Latria family, they were an aristocratic house with a storied history. Teresa wasn't bad, which Teresa is Zenith's sister, which again, for those anime onlys, they skipped that whole chapter. I made a whole video on it. But as a group, they probably had fixed ideas about adultery and status. They probably doted on Norn while ignoring Aisha. Of course, they weren't related by blood to her. Yeah, Millis is not going to be too happy. Millis' church and Millis' belief is not going to be too happy about, yes, Paul having two women. But yeah, Aisha breaking down to tears was hurt. That hurt so much. Being seen as something less. And again, that's such a sad state that Lilia has sort of built around her relationship with the family. Again, because she cheated on Zenith by sleeping with Paul, she literally broke that trust that Zenith had in her by sleeping with Paul. She had that child, and she felt like that was her basically her punishment, and that she had to raise that child in order to redeem herself. There's a whole chapter on Lilia's relationship with her daughter, which is technically a whole bit in itself that is, I think I made a whole video on that as well, which is super heartbreaking how she sees her relationship with her daughter and the family. If nothing else, Rudeus got a sense of the problem here. Aisha was being treated as an illegitimate daughter. In turn, she was trying to be better than Norn. A wedge grew between them, a twisted relationship long before they even reached him. With the Latria family so far away, there was none to sneer at Aisha. As long as he played his part carefully, it would fade away. Again, these two girls came in with baggage. It's not because they're there that suddenly there's an issue happening. He's recognizing, no, they came with baggage, and he's got to fix the situation. Aisha, it seems like, it's an easy one to fix, and that's really just kind of showing her that she is an equal. Like, she is my sister. You are my sister. I don't see you as I don't see Lilia as a mistress. I see Lilia as a mother, as part of the family. You're my sister. You're not my half-sister. But at this point in the novel series, Rudeus goes back to the university, enrolls Norn, gets her dorm set up and everything. Sylphie was critical of his plans at first, asking if he really wanted to push her away like that. Her impulse was to keep Norn in the house and shower her with affection, until she trusted them a bit more. But after how uncomfortable Norn was the whole week, he couldn't convince himself that it was best to keep her there. Rudeus explained that he thought that Aisha and Norn might be better off living separate for a while. He told her that it seemed like his mother's family gave Aisha a hard time about being the daughter of a mistress. He didn't want to push Norn away, but they needed some space for now. Sylphie agreed to keep an eye on Norn whenever she could. After this, Aisha settled into her new role, taking care of the housework. She was really good, even if Rudeus couldn't rub his face in Sylphie's dirty underwear anymore. Sylphie was still in charge of groceries and cooking, as the role that she wanted to hold on to. But Aisha did help her out. They did have a whole conversation between Rudeus and Sylphie, and it did have this moment where Rudeus realized, he's kind of thankful the idea that Sylphie didn't seem like she felt like Aisha doing the maid work would be like entering her domain. Like he was afraid that having Aisha just show up and doing all the housework and stuff would be troubling to Sylphie. Like Sylphie wanted to do that stuff herself. But again, Sylphie's noting the idea that no, I'm going to be doing this stuff with Ariel, and I don't really have too much time to take care of the full house. So there's actually a benefit to her. Aisha also did roles that Rudeus wasn't aware of, greeting neighbors, arranging chimney sweeps. She was sharp and a hard worker. It seemed like she was really serious about taking this job on, dropping the clingy sister act and turning into an almost robotic professional. Lilia's training was very thorough. She even attended to Sylphie when she was there, brushing her hair and putting out her clothes, giving her a bow as she left for the night shift. Sylphie wasn't used to it and acted awkwardly to Aisha's attention. It was always fun to watch them interact. Aisha would also attend to guests and keep them entertained, though the only person that dropped by was Nanahoshi in order to thank him formally. She ordered his reward, which was a magical circle for the specific summoning spell that he might find useful. She promised to explain to him how to use it before they moved on to stage 2. In the end, after Aisha drew a bath for her to wash herself and prepared her clothes, Nanahoshi left grumbling about how he was a monster for working his sister to death. It's like, no, it was Aisha's choice. Aisha wanted to do it, Nanahoshi. Rudeus remembered the theory that mana capacity was partially determined by how much magic he used as a child. He figured it'd be best to give Aisha some training in magic, despite not attending school. While she was 10, and her mana capacity may not change much, it wasn't set in stone. He also figured it'd be better for her to know intermediate tier offensive magic. Beginner tier was fine, but intermediate was more useful to defend yourself. Offering her to practice magic, she trotted over with a big smile and sat on his lap. She was awfully cute when she wanted to be. She's always cute. What are you talking about? During their first session, she had a grasp for the fundamentals. She hadn't taken the time to learn intermediate spells, but she could if she had the right textbooks. She wasn't capable of silent casting though, probably a bit too late to learn that. After running through some things, he gave her some homework. To spend her mana every day until it ran dry. And that's kind of the key thing they've kind of figured as to how to build your mana pools, keep running it dry while they're young. That night, while Sylphie was working, Aisha clambered onto his bed and asked if she can sleep with him. After seeing her break down in tears the other day, he couldn't bring himself to say no. After welcoming her in, it was purely innocent. She was his sister, and also just a kid. If she developed a crush on him, he would have to convince her to give it up. He didn't know if sister kissing was immoral in this world, but he liked his family just the way it was. He's like, I didn't touch her. It's purely innocent. For a few days, Norn was quiet in preparation for her move, but she wasn't hostile. Sadly, however, it didn't seem like they were getting closer, despite his hopes of improving their relationship. He even tried to invite her to the bath, thinking it would break the ice. But she just grimaced with a no, while Aisha popped out and volunteered to go instead. She's like, I'll go. And yes, for those who don't know, that's typically a Japanese thing, is taking a bath together kind of breaks down the barriers and you're able to have a conversation. Norn's roommate was decided, a 4th year like Nanahoshi. He was hoping a 5th or 6th year since he knew more of them. The girl was Marisa, a parrot-human hybrid with a big colorful crest on her head that twitched when she got excited or upset. Rudeus hadn't heard anything bad about her, but he did try to introduce himself. However, she ran in fear for her life. Given that reaction, it reminded him that Norn should probably keep her relation to him a secret. Like that's gonna work. On the opposite end, Sylphie, Luke, and Ariel were popular and drew crowds, so she could spend some time with them to improve her social skills. While they could be a bit jealous of her, it may be adversity she could learn to face. All that said, he probably shouldn't get involved unless necessary. This is all complicated and making him nervous as hell. As she got ready to leave, there was tons of things that he wanted to warn her about. He told her to seek out Sylphie or him if she needed help, to take baths, do homework, try not to catch a cold. The whole thing left her glaring at him. That was something at least. She finally showed me some sort of emotion. Yeah, this is the point where we get the skip chapter with, it's about Ginger and Zenova, which again, I'll cover in a separate video. After that, a month passes by. Rudeus is noticing that, yes, Norn doesn't seem like she has any friends. He's growing a little bit concerned about the whole situation. It seems like Linia and Pursena pick up on his worriedness and decide to give him a present, which is, yes, obviously something fishy. He really hoped that it wasn't some sort of happy powder. There was a couple kinds of narcotics making the rounds in the Northern Territory and the Demon Continent. Milos and Asura had their laws restricting it. That said, he had no intention of picking up a habit. He had no magic to kick the addiction or withdrawals. Sane tier detoxification was needed to deal with that sort of thing. Plus, he had no current need to escape from reality. Still, if it was that, he could sell it. He's actually considered selling some narcotics. He then acquired Pursena and Linia about his sister, since they knew most everyone. They immediately knew about Aisha, as his scent was on her in the marketplace. But Norn, they weren't aware of. With note of his issue with Norn, Linia and Pursena suggested they spread word of his greatness. But he didn't really trust them to tell good stories. As he talked with them about her possibility of having issues fitting in, the two were fumbling over their words. They were hiding something. After clarifying Norn's age when they asked, they sighed relief, which is a tip-off to what happens, what that whole bag is about. It was obvious that they did something to someone, but they shifted back to the present, saying he couldn't be mad if it wasn't to his likings. They worked really hard on that gift that's in that bag. But yeah, at that point, Rudeus goes to lunch with everybody, and at that point, he's realizing that Badigadi isn't around, and he's starting to be concerned about that. But yeah, Luke shows up, drags him off to the office, which was the point that he finds out that somebody has been, Linia and Pursena has been going around stealing Pantsu. And Rudeus immediately knows that, yeah, what's in this bag is probably what you're looking for. It is funny because there's a lot of emphasis in this whole scene about the idea that Sylphie's like, oh crap, I'm not satisfying him enough that he's willing to go out and find Pantsu. And he's like, it's not like I have like an obsession with Pantsu or anything like that. Which, yes, technically gets the conversation when he goes to scold Linia and Pursena. When he talked to Linia and Pursena, they claimed that they didn't force any of the girls and gave them fresh Pantsu in exchange. So at least they were giving something back. They're like, hey, give us your Pantsu. Here's some fresh ones. Though it didn't change the fact they were intimidating in nature, probably didn't make it seem like it was mutual. Still, Linia and Pursena were terrified of Rudeus, fearing punishment from him. But Rudeus did recognize that they were trying to do something good for him. Noticing him feeling down, they were trying to cheer him up. It's obviously implying here that they noticed that Rudeus is stressing over the whole situation with Norn and Aisha, and they were trying to do something to help him. That was their only motivation here. Rudeus had sympathy for their victims, but they basically meant well. They weren't setting out to humiliate anyone, like the bullies in his previous life. Ariel would be taking care of the victims, but he told Linia and Pursena he'd have them grovel, naked in front of any student that were traumatized by this. In the end, Rudeus couldn't get too angry at them, which surprised him a bit. Maybe he was biased because they were his friends. Yeah, it's kind of that aspect of there. He obviously does not like bullies. He hates bullies, does not like the idea of people bullying people. And this is a situation that could be seen as Linia and Pursena bullying people, but he's sort of giving some lenience there, and he's realizing that it might be because I have a bias because they're my friends. Yeah, when he asked them why the heck was they gathering a bunch of Pantsu, they're like, what? We thought you worshiped Ponties. He's like, what are you talking about? Oh, crap, that's right. I showed him Roxy's Pantsu. I should have never shown those idiots this Pantsu. He says, I'm not worshiping the panties themselves. They just belong to someone who I do worship. They're a holy relic, basically. They're like, what? Really? We totally thought you were in a panties cult or something. Oh, so good. Rudeus then said, if you really want to give me panties, he said, I prefer you take the ones off yourself right now in front of me. They said, huh? What? I knew it. You do want to mate with us, boss. Well, of course he does. Deep down, he's just another dude. We're irresistible. Rudeus was puzzled why they were teasing him and not getting grossed out. He didn't think they had a crush on him. It was something different. It seemed they liked him, but it was different the way that Sylphie liked him. For now, they just seemed like they had some sort of weird friendship. There's a point right here where it's starting to seem like Rudeus is acknowledging that people sort of have an attraction to him. Like, he is getting older. He is showing that handsomeness. I mean, Paul was super good looking. So it does make sense that he has that noticed blood in him, that yes, there's going to be attraction coming to him. But yeah, the episode wraps up with Norn walking by and Linia and Pursena be like, what are you doing in your first year? What are you looking at? You want to start some problems? He's like, hey, that's my sister, by the way. And they just immediately straighten up. Man, she's really adorable, isn't she? Yeah, she's got a lot of fighting spirit in her. Rudeus noted that the silent treatment from Norn was starting to get to him. He wanted to at least have a basic conversation with her, but as long as she was managing on her own, he didn't want to push the issue. For a while, things were uneventful. Norn would drop by every 10 days as promised. If it took a year or two for her to warm up to him, he could live with that. And that's where we're concluding the episode right there. There is another line there, but I'm not going to do that line. We obviously see that Norn is not too happy in a brief shot of her in her room. So we'll have to see where that goes. I'm super excited for the next episode, but at the same time, I am not looking forward to it. There is 2 really pinnacle moments that are coming up here in a second, and I'm really hoping the anime nails it. That's all I'm saying. I'm just really hoping the anime nails it. But that's it for this impression/skip content video. This went on for like way too long. So thank you to everybody that actually watched this whole video. I hope you guys enjoyed me going through all the skip content. Like I said, it turned out to be a lot more skip content than I thought it would. But them's the breaks, unfortunately. They're trying to get it through all this kind of side thought processes and stuff. There is, I think, honestly, for me, the big kind of painful thing for me is really the fact that they skipped a lot of that Rudeus being conflicted about Ruijerd being uncomfortable being there. A lot of this kind of perspective of Rudeus sort of seeing there being a conflict between Aisha and Norn. I mean, you see it in the anime. It's obviously there. You can see it with your eyes. But there is an aspect of like seeing that deeper inner thought that's happening there. But anyhow, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button to get my content. I do news reviews, first impressions, top list if it's anime is premature. Additionally, if you like this content and want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips, links, and things, membership button down below. Share it with your friends. And with all that said, y'all take care.